The wind carved knives through the canyon as they dragged her out. Barefoot, belly raw from the birth, her baby girl swaddled in a torn blanket. They left her beneath a leaning fence post, where the frost bit deep and the stars didn't bother to look down. No name, no prayers, just a death sentence written in silence. She cradled her newborn against her chest, shivering so hard her teeth cracked. Above them, the northern lights shimmered like pale ghosts. Her voice was gone, her strength almost too, when she heard the slow, careful crunch of boots across the ice. A figure stepped from the darkness, a wide-brimmed hat, a rifle slung low. The rancher didn't say a word. He just knelt in the snow and reached out his hand. Subscribe now, because tomorrow's story will haunt you even deeper. You'll need it. But before that, let me take you to the day it all began. They called the town Gritwood. Not for the land, but for the people. Hard faces, harder hearts. Dust hung in the air like an oath no one dared break. A single dirt road ran through the middle, lined by crooked storefronts, a tired saloon, a church that hadn't heard a real sermon in years. When she walked through town, heads turned, not in welcome, but in warning. Mothers pulled their children closer. Men whispered behind their hands. She kept her chin down, her shawl wrapped tight. The limp in her left leg was more noticeable these days, dragging in the dust behind her. No one asked how she got it. No one asked about the scar that climbed from her temple to her jaw like a cracked riverbed. No one asked anything at all. Once she'd been someone, a wife to a rancher with calloused hands and a quiet laugh, a woman with her own pew at church, a future as certain as the seasons. But when the fever took him, and the baby, he never got to meet. She was left with nothing but land she couldn't work and debts she couldn't pay. The town said it was bad luck to love a cursed woman. They said when she sang by the window, coyotes came too close to the fields. They said when she cried, the milk soured. They said she should have followed her husband into the grave. She stopped speaking after that, stopped meeting eyes, stopped hoping. She lived 2 miles outside Gritwood, in a cabin stitched together with old boards and stubbornness. No one visited, not even the preacher. Only the wind kept her company, and the sharp smell of the earth after rain, reminding her that even the dirt tried harder to be alive than she did. Every few weeks, she came to town for salt, flour, a bit of soap if she could afford it. Every time the same quiet cut through the air like a blade. Every time she felt the weight of being other. In the saloon, they spun new stories about her. She talks to spirits. She cursed Tom Bridger's cattle. She ain't right since the stillbirth. She learned to live in the hollow left behind. She learned that loneliness was a kind of armor. But some nights, when the coyotes howled, too close and the fire burned too low, she'd press her hand to the empty place where a cradle used to sit, and wonder if the town was right. If maybe she was cursed, and she knew something was coming. A cold deeper than winter, a reckoning dressed in human skin. If this is breaking your heart already, you haven't seen the worst yet. Tap subscribe. I've got another truth waiting for you tomorrow. The day the stranger rode into Gritwood, the wind changed. It wasn't a storm, not yet. But the air smelled sharper, as if the earth itself braced for something it couldn't name. Dust whirled in uneasy spirals along the road. Horses snorted and pawed the ground. Even the dogs kept close to the porches, whining low. She was loading her sack with cornmeal and beans at the mercantile when she heard it, the slow, deliberate clop of hooves. She didn't look up at first. Outsiders were rare but not unheard of. Most left by sundown, muttering about the coldness that went deeper than the weather. But this one didn't move like the others. Didn't gawk. Didn't leer. He dismounted with a kind of quiet purpose, tying his horse to the rail as if he belonged there, or intended to. When she glanced up, their eyes caught, just for a breath. His face was sun-worn, the shadow of a beard on his jaw, a battered hat pulled low. But it was his eyes that pinned her, steady, unflinching. He nodded. A simple, human thing. She blinked, caught off guard, and turned away too fast, nearly spilling the sack from her hands. Behind her, the door creaked open as he entered the store. She tried to pay him no mind, busying herself at the counter. But she felt him, the weight of his gaze. Not heavy, not judging, just seeing. Old Mr. Callahan, the storekeep, grunted, uneasily, his wrinkled face twitching at the stranger. "You're new," he said, making it sound more accusation than observation. The man just nodded again. "Passing through," he answered, voice low and even. But he didn't look like he was in any kind of hurry to leave, and when his fingers brushed the counter near hers, calloused but gentle, she caught the faintest scent of saddle leather and pine. Without meaning to, she looked up again. For a second, the noise of the store, the creak of wood, the scrape of boots, the muttered rumors, faded into nothing. No words passed between them. None needed to. It wasn't love. It wasn't hope. It was something quieter, older, a thread pulled taut between two people who knew what it meant to be forgotten. Outside, the town watched, through windows, over barrels, from doorways half ajar. Woman cursed by death, a man with no past. It didn't sit right with them. Old Mrs. Baxter, who swore she'd seen witches once as a child, spat in the dust. "You mark my words," she hissed to whoever would listen. "Nothing good ever comes from mixing what's already broken." As the sun slipped lower, the stranger tipped his hat to the storekeep, paid in coin without haggling, and stepped back outside. She lingered in the doorway a moment too long, watching him swing into the saddle, his silhouette framed by the bleeding sky. For the first time in years, she felt a flicker of something deep in her chest, something dangerously close to longing. Tutri. Wind stirred again, colder now, and the first dark clouds began to claw their way over the mountains. Trouble was coming. She could feel it in her bones. But for once she didn't turn away from it. What if someone saw you for who you are, not what you carry? Subscribe. One day that story might be yours too. It happened the way all cruel things do in small towns, quietly at first, then all at once. Word had spread about the stranger and the way he looked at her, the cursed woman, the ghost widow. And in Gritwood, nothing stirred the pot like the scent of forbidden hope. It was market day when the trap was sprung. She came in with her usual basket, head down, trying not to feel the thousand eyes on her. The stranger was somewhere nearby. She could sense it like the way animals sense a coming storm. Old Mrs. Baxter beckoned her over with a smile too sweet to trust. A basket of apples sat at her feet. "Found something you might want," she said, voice syrupy. "A gift for your little one." The word stung like a slap, a blade twisted in a wound long scarred over. Before she could turn away, before she could run, a boy no older than 12 lunged from behind a barrel and yanked the shawl from her shoulders, exposing the jagged scar along her neck, the broken line of her collarbone, gasps, snickers, even a few claps from the men leaning against the saloon rails. They jeered, called her things she didn't have words strong enough to answer to. Witch, widow, womb cursed. She stood frozen for a heartbeat, then bolted. The basket clattered to the ground, scattering apples into the dust. Her limp dragged her back, made her slow, awkward. Tears blinded her as she stumbled out of town, down the broken road, into the scrublands where the snow was starting to fall heavy and mean. She didn't know where she was going, didn't care. The world blurred into white and pain and the sound of her own heart breaking all over again. Somewhere in the middle of it, her legs gave out. She fell to her knees, the cold biting deep through her skirts, slicing into her skin. She knelt there in the snow, hands buried in the frozen dirt, sobbing, so hard her ribs ached. The wind howled around her, carrying her grief into the empty sky. Maybe she could die here, she thought. Maybe the cold would take her quiet, like it almost had once before. The world dulled around the edges. She didn't hear him approach, not at first. Boots crunching in the snow, the shift of fabric in the wind, a low voice, not asking anything, not demanding, just being there. When she finally looked up through frozen lashes, he was standing a few feet away, not reaching for her, not speaking, just waiting, letting her choose. Letting her have what no one else ever did, dignity. Her body shook too hard to answer, but some small thread of herself, the part they hadn't stomped out yet, reached toward him. He stepped closer slowly and shrugged off his heavy coat. He didn't drape it around her like in some fairy tale. He simply held it out, offering, like a man would offer bread to a starving creature too proud to beg. Her fingers closed around the coat with a shudder. He helped her up without a word, steadying her with hands that didn't flinch from her scars. They walked back toward town together, slow, silent, with only the sound of the wind and the crunch of snow between them. She expected him to talk, to say something kind or clever, but he didn't. He just stayed, and somehow that was better than any promise he could have made. They thought she was broken, but someone saw gold in the ashes. Subscribe. I promise you, tomorrow's story will prove love still lives out here. Winter sank its teeth deep into Gritwood, but something deeper took root inside her. It started small, a stubbornness, a flicker of warmth where there'd only been ash. He came back, day after day, helping without asking, never pushing. Fixing the broken hinge on her door, splitting wood and stacking it neatly by the hearth, leaving small things behind, a worn glove on the porch, a coil of rope by the gate. She fought it at first, the kindness, the weight of being seen. Fought it the way a wounded animal fights the hand that saves it. But slowly, with every silent sunrise they shared mending fence posts and every long evening spent by the crackle of the fire, she realized she wasn't alone anymore. Not unless she chose to be. They rebuilt the barn together, a crumbling thing that had once held dreams and now creaked under the burden of new ones. He taught her to break the wild filly that roamed the edges of her land, a fierce little thing with more fight than sense. They built a place that was stitched together not with perfection, but with effort, rough, real, human. And for the first time in years when she laughed, soft, startled, it didn't sound like something broken. But the past doesn't let go easy. Not hers, not his. One evening, as they sat by the firelight, he told her, voice rough, gaze steady, about the bounty hunters that sometimes followed him. About the lawman in another county who would love nothing more than to see him swing from a tree. About the blood he couldn't wash from his hands, no matter how many fences he mended or fires he lit. She listened without flinching. Because shame was a language she knew too well to judge anyone who spoke it. Still, the danger was real now. Tangible. If she stayed with him, if she kept building this life, she wasn't just risking more whispers from Gritwood. She was risking everything. The next morning she found a letter nailed to the cabin door. No signature, no mercy, witch and outlaw, both will hang. The message was clear, the town wouldn't stand for them. Fear crept back into her chest, cold and bitter. She could leave, start over, survive. But as she stood there, the morning light spilling gold over the broken land, she realized something. Survival wasn't enough anymore, not without him. Not without the fire they'd kindled between the ruins. You've come this far with her. You felt that, didn't you? Subscribe. I want you to meet someone else tomorrow. Someone just as forgotten. They gave them 3 days. 3 days to leave Gritwood, or face what passed for justice in a town built on fear. The letter was clear. The stairs even clearer. No one would stand with them. She packed slowly, methodically, the way she had after. The funeral, after the stillbirth, after every fresh ending life had thrown at her. But this time, her hands didn't tremble. He watched her from the doorway, a shadow framed by the dying light, waiting for her to decide, waiting for her to choose. Because this was her fight, as much as it was his, maybe more. When everything was packed, the blankets, the dried beans, the tools they couldn't bear to leave behind, she straightened her shoulders and looked him full in the face. "We ride at dawn," she said simply. He smiled, a slow, quiet thing that reached all the places she'd thought were dead inside. And then, without a word, he crossed the room and took her hand in his, rough, scarred, steady. They rode through the main street as the first pale gold of morning spilled over the rooftops. No one cheered. No one stopped them. A few spit into the dust as they passed. Some just turned away. But a child, a girl with a missing front tooth and bare feet, waved from a porch. It was enough. At the edge of town, he pulled his horse to a stop and turned to her. There, beneath the endless, forgiving sky, he pulled a small silver ring from his coat, battered and simple. No grand speeches, no kneeling, just a question in his eyes, and an answer in hers. She slipped the ring onto her finger, and together they rode on, into the wild country, where judgment didn't follow and hope could take root. Months later, on a night lit only by stars and a crackling fire, they built a new cabin with their own hands. Small, crooked, perfect. She planted a row of wildflowers by the door. He carved a cradle from old cedar, and when the time came, when their daughter was born with the same fierce light in her eyes, they named her after the woman she'd lost, the sister who once braided her hair and sang to her in the dark. No curses, no shame, only the life they made from the ashes, and when winter came again, as it always did, they didn't hide from it. They faced it, together, hand in hand, the snow swirling around them like a blessing. She was never a curse. She was someone's miracle all along. Subscribe, and let me introduce you to the next miracle tomorrow.